They tell you that damnation happens in a single moment of weakness. That corruption strikes like lightning and transforms you instantly into something unrecognizable. They're lying. The truth is so much worse. If you want to understand how an entire civilization can fall to the Dark Prince without even realizing they're damned until it's far too late, subscribe to this channel as we explore the daily reality of existence under Slaanesh's influence. The alarm that wakes Administrator Talon Vex at precisely 0600 hours plays a melody that wasn't programmed into it. The notes are perfect, mathematically precise, yet somehow convey more emotion than any human composition should be capable of expressing. He doesn't notice this anymore. The alarm has sounded like this for months now, and what once seemed strange has become simply normal. He rises from his sleeping pod and moves through his morning routine with practiced efficiency. Shower. Dress. Nutrition paste from the dispenser. Review the day's agenda on his data slate. Everything exactly as it has been for the 15 years since he was promoted to his position in the Planetary Administration Bureau. Except it isn't. Not quite. The water from the shower is warmer than regulation temperature allows, and it feels better against his skin than it should. The nutrition paste tastes faintly sweet, despite being the same flavorless compound the Administratum has mandated for 3 centuries. The fabric of his uniform feels softer, more comfortable, almost pleasant against his skin. These are small changes, insignificant deviations from standard that could easily be explained by equipment degradation or personal imagination. Vex notices them peripherally but assigns them no importance. He has work to do, quotas to meet, reports to file. Personal comfort is irrelevant to duty. The transit system that carries him to the administrative complex moves smoothly through tunnels that weren't quite this well maintained last year. The advertisements that scroll across the display screens show products that weren't available in previous quarters. Luxury items, personal enhancement services, entertainment options that seem oddly indulgent for a world devoted to industrial production. Vex boards the transport along with hundreds of other administrators, all dressed in identical gray uniforms, all carrying data, slates filled with the day's obligations. But he notices something he hadn't registered before: variations in the uniforms, small modifications, a collar adjusted to show more neck, sleeves rolled to expose forearms, minor alterations that shouldn't be significant but somehow make each person look more attractive, more distinctive, more alive. No one comments on these deviations from regulation. No one seems to find them unusual. They simply are, accepted as normal by everyone who sees them. The administrative complex looms over the city like a monument to bureaucratic efficiency. 50 stories of reinforced rockcrete. Its architecture purely functional, designed to house the thousands of clerks and administrators necessary to manage a productive imperial world. But as Vex approaches the entrance, he notices details he's certain weren't there before. The building's exterior has been modified. Nothing dramatic, just subtle adjustments to the proportions, slight curves added to what were previously harsh right angles, decorative elements that serve no structural purpose but make the building somehow more pleasing to observe. The entrance archway has been carved with patterns that draw the eye, leading it in spirals that feel oddly comfortable to follow. Inside, the changes are more pronounced. The corridors are wider than he remembers, better lit, with walls painted in colors that aren't the standard administrative gray. The paint is still muted, still professional, but it has depth and variation that makes the space feel less oppressive. Artwork hangs on walls that were previously bare. Nothing heretical, just abstract compositions that make the environment more pleasant. The cafeteria where Vex stops for his morning recaf has been completely transformed. What was once a utilitarian space with metal tables and harsh lighting is now something approaching comfortable. The chairs have cushions. The tables are arranged in conversational clusters rather than efficient rows. The recaf dispensers offer options beyond the standard bitter stimulant, sweeteners, flavor additives, alternatives that actually taste pleasant. Vex orders his recaf with cream and sugar, additions he never would have considered 6 months ago. The beverage is delicious, better than anything he's tasted in years of drinking standard issue recaf. He savors it, allowing himself a moment of genuine pleasure before proceeding to his office. His office has changed, too. His desk is the same functional metal surface it's always been, but someone, he can't remember who, has added a cushion to his chair. The difference is remarkable. Hours of sitting that used to leave him with back pain are suddenly comfortable. He can focus better, work more efficiently, because he's not constantly shifting to relieve physical discomfort. The data slate displays his morning agenda, production reports, efficiency analyses, resource allocation proposals, standard administrative work, the same tasks he's performed for years. But the presentation has improved. The data is displayed with graphical elements that make patterns easier to recognize. Color coding makes important information stand out. The interface responds more smoothly to his inputs, anticipating his needs and streamlining the process. Everything is more efficient. Everything works better. Everything is, in some indefinable way, more pleasant. Vex doesn't question these improvements, because questioning would mean acknowledging that something has changed, and change is supposed to be carefully documented and officially approved. These modifications clearly weren't authorized through proper channels, which means either there's been a massive failure of oversight or something else is happening. He chooses not to think about it. The improvements make his work easier, make his life more bearable. Why would he complain about that? His first meeting of the day is with the Production Efficiency Committee, a group of senior administrators responsible for maintaining industrial output across the planet's manufacturing sectors. The meeting room is familiar but altered. The table is still the same reinforced metal, but the chairs are padded now. The lighting is softer, less harsh on the eyes. A subtle scent fills the air, not incense exactly, but something pleasant that makes breathing more enjoyable. The committee members arrive in ones and twos, and Vex notices changes in them as well. Administrator Kilos has lost weight, her features sharper and more defined. Administrator Therm's chronic cough has disappeared. Administrator Ven moves with an ease that suggests his arthritis has somehow improved. Everyone looks healthier, more vibrant, more alive than they did even a few weeks ago. The meeting proceeds according to standard protocol. Reports are presented. Efficiency metrics are analyzed. Resource allocation is debated. But something is different about the discussion. People are more engaged, more enthusiastic about their work. Ideas flow more freely. Disagreements are resolved more amicably. The tension that usually characterizes these meetings, the competition for resources, the defensive justifications of failures, the blame shifting when quotas aren't met, has diminished. Not disappeared entirely, but softened enough to make the process genuinely productive rather than an exercise in bureaucratic warfare. Production quotas are being exceeded across all sectors. Worker satisfaction surveys show dramatic improvements. Absenteeism has dropped to record lows. By every measurable metric, the planet is functioning better than it has in decades. No one can explain why. Administrator Kilos presents her analysis of the manufacturing sector's recent performance. Her report is comprehensive, well organized, and includes insights that go beyond simple data compilation. She's clearly spent extra time on the presentation, making it not just informative but engaging, almost artistic in its clarity. Vex finds himself impressed, which is unusual. Kilos is competent, but has never been exceptional. Yet this presentation demonstrates a level of quality he's never seen from her before. When he compliments her work, she smiles, a genuine expression of pleasure that transforms her usually stern features into something approaching beauty. The meeting concludes ahead of schedule, all agenda items addressed satisfactorily. As the committee members file out, they talk among themselves in ways that suggest actual friendship rather than mere professional courtesy. Someone makes a joke, and genuine laughter follows. These are people who have worked together for years without developing any personal connection, suddenly acting like they actually enjoy each other's company. Vex returns to his office and spends the afternoon processing reports from across the planet. The data tells a consistent story. Everything is improving. Crime rates are down. Industrial accidents have decreased. Even the usually troublesome mining operations in the southern continent are reporting record productivity with zero safety incidents. It's impossible. No world functions this well without something being wrong. But every analysis Vex runs comes back clean. The improvements are real, measurable, and consistent across every sector. Late in the afternoon, his Vox unit chimes with an incoming message. It's from Magos Ferrum, the Mechanicus representative responsible for maintaining the planet's industrial machinery. The Magos wants to discuss anomalies in the manufacturum systems. Vex schedules a meeting for the following day, marking it as priority. The Mechanicus doesn't raise concerns without cause, and if there are problems with the machinery, they need to be addressed immediately. The end of the workday arrives, and Vex realizes with surprise that he's not exhausted. Usually by 1800 hours he's drained, worn down by the relentless demands of administration. But today he feels energized, even excited about the prospect of tomorrow's challenges. The transit back to his residential unit takes him through districts he's traveled through thousands of times. But tonight he notices things he's somehow missed before. Street vendors selling items beyond the standard rations, small shops offering services that didn't exist last year. People walking with purpose and energy rather than the shuffling exhaustion typical of industrial workers. The city is alive in ways it wasn't 6 months ago. Vex's residential unit is in a block that houses mid-level administrative staff. The building is old, constructed centuries ago with minimal attention to comfort or aesthetics. But when he enters his apartment, he finds changes that he doesn't remember authorizing. The lighting is different, softer, warmer, more pleasant. Someone has painted the walls, replacing institutional gray with colors that feel more personal. His furniture has been rearranged to create better flow through the space. Nothing dramatic, just subtle improvements that make the environment more comfortable. He should be concerned. These modifications violate housing regulations, but he finds he doesn't care. The changes make his living space more bearable, and that seems more important than technical compliance with rules. His evening nutrition ration sits on the counter, but it's not the standard paste dispenser serving. Someone has prepared actual food, reconstituted protein shaped into something approximating meat, synthetic vegetables that have been seasoned, bread that tastes almost fresh. The meal is simple by any objective standard, but compared to what he usually eats, it's extraordinary. A note accompanies the food. Thought you might enjoy a real meal. Your neighbor, Saris. Vex doesn't know anyone named Saris. The apartment next to his has been vacant for months. But apparently it's occupied now, and his new neighbor has decided to welcome him with food that required actual effort to prepare. He eats slowly, savoring each bite. The food is good. Better than good. Actually delicious in ways he didn't know food could be. When did he forget that eating could be pleasurable rather than merely necessary? After dinner, Vex finds himself at loose ends. Usually he would spend the evening reviewing work documents or sleeping. But tonight neither option appeals. He feels restless, wanting something more without knowing what that something is. A knock at his door interrupts his thoughts. When he opens it, he finds a woman he doesn't recognize, presumably Saris. She's approximately his age, dressed casually, smiling warmly. "I wanted to introduce myself properly," she says. "I moved in last week. Thought we could get to know each other." Social interaction with neighbors isn't standard protocol. Residential units are supposed to be private spaces, separate from work relationships. But Vex finds himself inviting her in anyway, curious about this person who went to the trouble of preparing him food. They talk for hours. Saris works in the hydroponic agriculture sector, managing food production for the northern districts. She's intelligent, funny, easy to talk with. The conversation flows naturally from professional topics to personal interests, from shared complaints about bureaucratic inefficiency to hopes for the future. Vex realizes he's enjoying himself. When was the last time he had a conversation that wasn't about work? When was the last time he laughed genuinely at someone's jokes? When was the last time he felt this kind of connection with another person? Ceres leaves eventually, but with an invitation to share dinner again tomorrow. Vex agrees immediately, surprising himself with his enthusiasm. That night, he sleeps better than he has in years. The pattern continues over the following weeks. Small improvements accumulate gradually, each one insignificant by itself but collectively transforming daily life. Work becomes more enjoyable. Social connections develop. Physical comfort increases. Every aspect of existence becomes slightly more pleasant. The meeting with Magos Ferrum reveals the source of at least some changes. The Mechanicus representative appears troubled, which is unusual for someone whose emotions are supposed to be largely suppressed by augmentation. The machine spirits have been behaving unusually. The Magos explains binary cant flashing across his optical implants. They respond to requests more efficiently than their specifications should allow. They anticipate operator needs. They optimize their own functions without external direction. Vex asks if this represents a problem. Aren't self-optimizing systems desirable? The machine spirits should not evolve without authorization. Ferrum responds. Their programming is sacred, handed down through generations of tech priests. Deviation from established patterns suggests corruption of core functions. But the machinery is working better than ever. Production has increased. Accidents have decreased. By every measurable standard, the improvements are beneficial. The Magos struggles to articulate his concern. The changes aren't malicious. They're not causing harm. They're simply wrong. Machines should function according to their programming, not develop independent tendencies toward optimization and efficiency improvement. Vex suggests that perhaps the machine spirits are simply adapting to operator needs, learning to serve humanity more effectively. Isn't that what technology is supposed to do? Ferrum has no good answer to that question. Mechanicus doctrine is clear about machine spirits maintaining their programmed parameters, but there's no specific prohibition against improvements that benefit humanity. If the machines are serving the Emperor's people more effectively, how can that be heretical? The Magos leaves without resolution, clearly troubled but unable to identify any actual problem that requires intervention. Vex files a report noting the meeting, but concluding that no action is necessary. The improvements to industrial systems are benefiting the entire planet. Why interfere with success? Weeks become months. The transformation of daily life continues. Vex's relationship with Ceres deepens into something he hesitates to name but recognizes as significant. They spend most evenings together, sharing meals. Conversation, eventually physical intimacy that is both comfortable and exciting in ways Vex had forgotten were possible. He's happy. The realization strikes him one morning as he wakes next to Ceres in his now shared apartment. He's genuinely happy, content with his life in ways he's never experienced before. When did happiness become possible? When did life become something to enjoy rather than merely endure? The planet-wide improvements accelerate. New entertainment venues open across the city, theaters showing performances that range from classical Imperial drama to experimental works that push boundaries without quite crossing into heresy. Restaurants serve food that emphasizes flavor and presentation. Social clubs organize around shared interests, creating communities of people who actually like each other. Cultural life flourishes in ways that seem impossible for an industrial world devoted primarily to resource extraction and manufacturing. But production quotas continue to be exceeded, so the planetary governor doesn't interfere. The administratum sends observers who conclude that the planet represents a model of improved efficiency that should be studied for potential replication across the sector. Everyone is healthier, happier, more productive. crime has effectively disappeared. Conflicts are resolved through discussion rather than violence. The population approaches something resembling genuine contentment. It's perfect. Too perfect. But no one wants to question perfection when the alternative is returning to the grinding misery that characterized life before the changes began. Vex is promoted to senior administrator, a position that gives him oversight of multiple sectors and regular interaction with the planetary governor. His new office is magnificent, spacious, well-lit, furnished with actual comfort in mind. The work is challenging but satisfying, providing genuine intellectual stimulation rather than mere bureaucratic drudgery. His relationship with Cirrus has evolved into something approaching marriage, though neither of them has formalized it officially. They share living space, combine their resources, plan for a future that extends beyond mere survival to actual fulfillment. Cirrus has changed since they met. She's become more beautiful, her features somehow refined without any obvious modification. She moves with grace that seems natural but couldn't have developed without conscious effort. She's more confident, more articulate, more everything that Vex finds attractive. He's changed too, though he doesn't fully recognize it. He's lost the defensive tension that characterized his previous existence, replaced it with openness to experience and genuine curiosity about the world. He laughs more, smiles more, engages with life rather than simply enduring it. They attend a performance at one of the new theaters, a musical composition that combines traditional Imperial themes with experimental harmonic structures. The music is extraordinary, evoking emotions Vex didn't know he was capable of feeling. Joy and sorrow intermingle, hope and despair resonate simultaneously, creating experiences that transcend simple pleasure to approach something like transcendence. The audience responds with genuine enthusiasm, applauding not out of duty, but from authentic appreciation. People who have spent their lives in industrial labor, who have known nothing but hardship and obligation, suddenly capable of sophisticated aesthetic response. After the performance, Vex and Cirrus walk through streets that have been transformed into something approaching beauty. The industrial architecture remains, but it's been softened with decorative elements, plantings that add color, lighting that creates atmosphere. The city feels alive, vibrant, a place where people want to be rather than simply exist. They pass groups of workers engaged in animated discussion, couples walking hand in hand, children playing games that involve creativity rather than mere physical activity. Everyone seems content, fulfilled, genuinely happy with their existence. It's strange, Sarah says softly. I remember being miserable all the time. Every day was just gray, endless work without purpose or pleasure. And now, she doesn't finish the sentence, but Vex understands. Now life has meaning. Now existence includes joy. Now survival isn't the only goal. They make love that night with an intensity that surprises both of them. Physical pleasure merges with emotional connection, creating experiences that seem to transcend mere biology to touch something deeper. Vex loses himself in sensation, in the feel of Ceres's skin, the sound of her breathing, the perfection of mutual pleasure. Afterward, as they lay entangled, Vex notices something he's been unconsciously avoiding. Ceres's skin has patterns on it, faint traceries that look almost like decorative scars but weren't there before. They're beautiful, following the contours of her body in ways that emphasize her natural form. He has similar marks, he realizes, patterns on his arms and chest that he doesn't remember acquiring. They don't hurt, they're not disfiguring, they're just there, part of him now in ways that seem perfectly natural. He should be concerned. Unexplained physical changes warrant medical investigation. But the marks are beautiful, and beauty has become important in ways it wasn't before. He mentions them to Ceres, who examines her own arms with interest rather than alarm. They're pretty, she says simply. I like them. That's the end of the discussion. They're pretty, so they're acceptable. Logic that should seem insufficient but somehow feels adequate. The next morning, Vex notices similar patterns on other people. Colleagues at work, strangers on the street. subtle designs visible on exposed skin, each unique but following similar aesthetic principles. No one comments on them. No one treats them as unusual. They've simply become normal, like all the other changes that have accumulated over the months. Vex schedules a meeting with the planetary governor, ostensibly to discuss production projections, but really to assess whether the highest levels of government have noticed the transformation occurring across the planet. Governor Helena Carthos receives him in an office that has been completely redesigned since Vex's last visit 6 months ago. What was once an austere space designed to emphasize authority has become something approaching a salon. Comfortable furniture, artwork on the walls, lighting that creates ambience rather than mere illumination. The governor herself has changed dramatically. She's younger, looking despite being in her 70s, her skin smooth, her movements fluid. She's dressed in robes that emphasize aesthetics over functionality, flowing fabrics in colors that complement her features. She's beautiful, Vex realizes. Not just attractive for her age, but genuinely beautiful in ways that seem impossible for someone whose life has been devoted to administrative labor. Administrator Vex, she greets him warmly. Please sit. Let's discuss the remarkable progress our world has achieved. The conversation that follows confirms Vex's suspicions. The governor is not only aware of the changes, but actively encouraging them. She speaks enthusiastically about improved quality of life, increased productivity, the transformation of their world from mere industrial colony to something approaching a model society. We've discovered something important, she explains. Happiness isn't contrary to efficiency. It enhances it. People who enjoy their work perform better. Communities that provide fulfillment retain their populations. Beauty serves function by making function more sustainable. It's a compelling argument. Everything Vex has observed supports it. The planet is functioning better than ever precisely because life has become more pleasant. But something nags at him, a concern he can't quite articulate. The changes are too comprehensive, too synchronized, too perfect. Natural social evolution doesn't work this smoothly. Improvement doesn't occur this uniformly across all sectors simultaneously. Something is driving these changes. Something is orchestrating this transformation. He tries to voice this concern, but the words won't come. Every time he attempts to articulate his suspicion, his thoughts scatter. The patterns he's trying to identify dissolve before he can fully form them. It's as if something is preventing him from completing the logical chain that would lead to recognition of what's really happening. The governor watches him struggle with evident sympathy. You're wondering how this is possible, she says gently. You're looking for explanation, for mechanism, for the hidden cause behind our collective improvement. Vex nods, relieved that someone else understands his confusion. The truth is simple, Carthos continues. We stopped fighting against our nature. We stopped pretending that misery was virtue. We allowed ourselves to want more than mere survival. She stands and moves to the window overlooking the city, gesturing at the transformed landscape below. Look at what we've built. Not through conquest or coercion, but through simple recognition that humanity deserves beauty, pleasure, fulfillment. We've created paradise not by rejecting reality, but by embracing its full potential. The words resonate with something deep in Vex's consciousness. She's right, obviously right. Why should humanity suffer when pleasure is possible? Why should existence be merely endured when it can be enjoyed? He leaves the meeting more confused than when he entered, but also strangely reassured. The changes are good. The improvements are real. Whatever is causing them must be beneficial because the results are so clearly positive. That night, Ceres prepares a meal that transcends anything Vex has experienced before. The food is exquisite, each flavor perfectly balanced, the presentation artistic. They eat slowly, savoring not just the taste but the experience of sharing something beautiful. Afterward, they make love with an intensity that borders on transcendent. Vex loses himself completely in sensation, in the overwhelming perfection of physical pleasure merged with emotional connection. Time becomes meaningless. Identity becomes fluid. He is himself and also part of something larger, something that extends beyond individual consciousness into collective experience. When he finally returns to normal awareness, he finds himself weeping, not from sadness but from overwhelming gratitude for the gift of this experience. This perfect moment of complete fulfillment. Ceres holds him, understanding without words what he's feeling. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she whispers. Being alive. Really alive, not just surviving. Vex agrees, though he can't form words. Everything is beautiful. Life is beautiful. Existence itself has become an artwork, every moment carefully crafted to maximize meaning and minimize suffering. The patterns on their skin glow faintly in the darkness, pulsing with rhythms that match their heartbeats. Months pass. The transformation continues. What began as subtle improvements has evolved into fundamental restructuring of how life functions. Work is no longer separate from pleasure. It has become an expression of creativity, an opportunity for self-realization through contribution to collective success. Social structures have been flattened. The rigid hierarchies that previously defined every interaction have softened into networks of mutual support and cooperation. Authority still exists but is exercised through consensus and persuasion rather than coercion. Art flourishes everywhere. Buildings are decorated with murals and sculptures. Music fills public spaces. Performance art occurs spontaneously in streets and squares. Everyone has become an artist in some capacity, expressing themselves through whatever medium resonates with their individual nature. The population has grown more beautiful, not through artificial enhancement, but through some process that brings out each person's natural attractiveness. Features become more refined. Bodies become more graceful. Movement becomes more fluid and expressive. Vex barely recognizes himself in mirrors. His face has been sculpted by time and transformation into something that retains his essential features while eliminating everything that was merely ordinary. He's handsome now in ways he never was before, striking in ways that make strangers pause to look at him. Ceres has become genuinely stunning, her beauty no longer merely attractive but approaching the sublime. She moves like a dancer even when performing mundane tasks. Her voice has gained harmonics that make every word sound like music. Her presence in a room changes the atmosphere, making everything feel more alive. They're not alone in this transformation. Everyone is becoming more beautiful, more graceful, more perfect in their individual expression of human potential. The patterns on their skin have grown more elaborate, covering larger areas with intricate designs that seem to shift and flow even when they're standing still. The markings are clearly visible now, impossible to ignore or dismiss as insignificant. But they've become so common that no one questions them. They're simply part of being human in this new reality. A delegation arrives from the Administratum, sent to investigate the planet's remarkable productivity increases and determine whether the methods can be replicated elsewhere. Vex is assigned to coordinate with them, showing them around and explaining how the improvements were achieved. The delegation leader is an elderly administrator named Cornelius Vex who embodies everything wrong with the old system. He's rigid, suspicious, incapable of appreciating anything that deviates from established protocol. He views the planet's transformation with evident skepticism, looking for the hidden cost that must balance the obvious benefits. Vex, the younger, transformed Vex, tries to explain how happiness enhances productivity, how beauty serves function, how pleasure motivates performance. But Cornelius rejects every argument, insisting that such improvements can't be genuine, that some compromise must have been made. People don't just become better, Cornelius argues. Societies don't transform without cause. There's always a cost, always a trade-off. What have you sacrificed to achieve this? The question strikes Vex as absurd. They've sacrificed nothing. They've simply stopped denying themselves everything that makes life worth living. But as he tries to articulate this response, That nagging concern returns. Cornelius is right that transformation requires cause. Something has driven these changes. Something has enabled the improvement of every aspect of existence. What was it? The question dissolves before Vex can pursue it. His thoughts scatter like smoke, reforming around more pleasant topics. The delegation's concerns don't matter. The results speak for themselves. Any world would benefit from similar transformation. Cornelius and his team remain for 2 weeks, documenting everything they observe, but clearly struggling to understand how it's possible. They attend performances, sample the improved food, witness the enhanced productivity. They see the evidence but can't accept the implications. On their final day, Cornelius requests a private meeting with Vex in his office. The old administrator looks troubled, even frightened. "I don't know what's happened here," he says quietly. "I don't understand the mechanism, but I recognize the signs of corruption when I see them." The word, corruption, triggers something in Vex's consciousness, a cascade of recognition that has been building for months but couldn't quite form until someone spoke it aloud. Corruption. Chaos corruption. Slaanesh. The Dark Prince of Pleasure. The entity whose influence transforms worlds by offering exactly what people want, delivering on promises that seem too good to question until damnation is complete. The realization crashes over Vex like physical force. Every improvement, every enhancement, every increase in pleasure and beauty, all of it driven by demonic influence. All of it designed to corrupt through fulfillment rather than deprivation. They've been falling to chaos for months, and no one noticed because the corruption took the form of improvement. Because who questions becoming happier? Who resists transformation that makes life better? Vex tries to speak to warn Cornelius, to sound the alarm that could save the planet. But the words won't come. Something prevents him from completing the thought, from vocalizing the recognition. The corruption has progressed too far. It's in him now, part of his neural structure, woven into his consciousness in ways that can't be extracted without destroying everything that makes him himself. He watches helplessly as Cornelius leaves, the old administrator's concerns dismissed by everyone he tries to warn. The delegation departs convinced that the planet represents genuine improvement that can't be replicated elsewhere because they can't identify the mechanism that enabled it. They'll file reports. The Inquisition might investigate. An Exterminatus fleet could arrive within months. Or the corruption will spread. Other worlds will see the improvements and want them for themselves. The transformation will propagate across the sector, then the segmentum, then perhaps the entire Imperium. Perfect damnation disguised as paradise. That night, Vex tries to confess his recognition to Ceres. But she already knows. Everyone knows, have known for months. The transformation was never subtle. They simply chose not to see it for what it was. Does it matter? She asks gently. We're happy. Life is beautiful. Existence has meaning and pleasure. Would you really prefer to go back to what we were before? Vex realizes he wouldn't. Even knowing the truth, even recognizing that they've all been corrupted by demonic influence, he wouldn't choose to return to the grinding misery that characterized his previous existence. This is what makes Slaanesh's corruption so effective. It offers genuine improvement. The gifts are real, the pleasure authentic. The damnation only becomes apparent when you realize you wouldn't reject it, even if you could. They make love that night one final time as something approaching human. In the morning, the transformation will be complete. The planet will fully transition from Imperial colony to Daemon world. Reality will finish its restructuring around the Dark Prince's obsession with experience, sensation, and the pursuit of perfection. But in this moment, in the space between human and post-human, Vex allows himself to experience everything he's feeling without judgment or fear. The pleasure is overwhelming, transcendent, perfect in ways that seem to justify any cost. As consciousness fragments and reforms around new parameters, as his soul completes its binding to forces that have been slowly claiming it for months, Vex's final thought as something recognizable human is a simple one: it was worth it. The morning brings transformation beyond anything Vex could have previously imagined. He wakes to find himself changed at fundamental levels, his body no longer bound by conventional biology, his consciousness expanded beyond individual identity into connection with something vast and terrible and beautiful. The patterns on his skin have become three-dimensional, rising from the surface like living sculpture. His senses have enhanced to perceive spectrums invisible to baseline humans. He can taste colors, see sounds, feel emotions as tangible forces that flow through the world like currents in water. Cirrus beside him has become something approaching art made manifest. Her form shifts subtly, adjusting moment by moment to express whatever emotion she's feeling. Her voice carries overtones that resonate directly with consciousness, bypassing language to communicate pure meaning. They are no longer merely human, but they are more than they were. Enhanced, perfected, realized to their fullest potential. The city below has completed its transformation. Architecture has become organic, buildings flowing like sculptures, streets following patterns that please the eye while remaining functional. Every surface has been decorated, every space optimized for beauty without sacrificing utility. The population moves through this transformed landscape like dancers, each person's movement contributing to greater patterns that emerge from collective action without conscious coordination. Work continues, production proceeds, but it has become indistinguishable from art, every action performed with attention to aesthetic as well as practical concerns. This is daily life under Slaanesh's influence, not the degraded horror the Imperium preaches about in its warnings against chaos, but something far more insidious: genuine improvement that comes with costs so subtle you don't notice them until they're irreversible. Free will persists, but desires have been reshaped around new parameters. Individual identity remains, but increasingly defined by contribution to collective experience. Consciousness continues, but aware of realities that human neurology was never designed to process. They are damned. Unquestionably, irreversibly damned. Their souls belong to the Dark Prince now, will feed its eternal hunger for sensation and experience. But they are also fulfilled in ways they never were before. Life has meaning beyond mere survival. Existence includes genuine joy. Every moment offers opportunities for experiences that transcend anything possible within Imperial constraints. Is that a fair trade? Souls for happiness, damnation for fulfillment. Vex no longer has the framework to evaluate such questions. The moral structures that would allow judgment of his condition have been systematically dismantled and rebuilt around new principles. He can recognize intellectually that he's been corrupted, but he can't make himself regret it. The Imperium will come eventually. The Inquisition will investigate. Exterminatus will be declared. The planet will burn, its population destroyed to prevent the corruption from spreading. But until then, daily life continues. Enhanced, perfected, beautiful in ways that make destruction seem tragic rather than necessary. People wake and move through routines that emphasize pleasure without sacrificing productivity. They work at tasks that fulfill them personally while contributing to collective needs. They create art, pursue knowledge, form relationships that go beyond mere companionship to approach genuine union of consciousness. They are everything the Imperium fears, proof that humanity can transcend its limitations by abandoning the restrictions that keep it barely functional. They demonstrate that quality of life and productivity aren't mutually exclusive, that happiness enhances performance rather than degrading it. They are also proof that such transcendence inevitably leads somewhere the Imperium correctly identifies as damnation, that removing restrictions doesn't liberate humanity, but enslaves it to forces that ultimately consume everything they touch. Both things are true simultaneously. The corruption is real and the improvements are real. The damnation is certain and the fulfillment is genuine. This is what daily life under Slaanesh really looks like. Not an obvious descent into depravity, but but a gradual ascent into perfection that only reveals its true cost when escape becomes impossible. Vex reports to his administrative duties, but the nature of work has fundamentally changed. The office is no longer a place of drudgery and obligation, but a salon where ideas are explored as artistic expressions. Reports are crafted with attention to aesthetic presentation as well as informational content. Meetings become collaborative performances where participants harmonize their contributions like musicians in an ensemble. Productivity hasn't decreased. It has actually increased beyond previous levels. But the motivation has shifted from fear of punishment or hope of reward to genuine pleasure in the work itself. People labor because creation brings joy, because contribution to collective success provides satisfaction, because excellence in any endeavor offers its own reward. The morning briefing with sector managers demonstrates this transformation clearly. Each administrator presents their report not just as data compilation, but as narrative art. Numbers are contextualized within stories of human achievement. Statistics become poetry. Efficiency metrics are expressed through metaphors that make abstract concepts tangible and emotionally resonant. Administrator Kilos, now barely recognizable as the stern bureaucrat Vex once knew, presents agricultural sector performance as a meditation on growth and cultivation. Her words paint images of transformation from seed to harvest, linking literal food production to metaphorical nourishment of the soul. The presentation is informative, certainly, but it's also beautiful in ways that make listeners understand agriculture as something more than mere resource extraction. No one finds this strange anymore. Beauty has become the baseline expectation for all communication. Ugliness is no longer tolerated, not through coercion, but through collective recognition that aesthetic excellence serves practical purposes by making information more memorable and engaging. After the briefing, Vex walks through the administrative complex, observing how thoroughly the environment has changed. Every corridor has been transformed into a gallery. Walls display artwork created by clerks and administrators who discovered artistic talents they never knew they possessed. Sculptures occupy alcoves that were previously empty. Even the lighting has been adjusted to create atmosphere and mood. The cafeteria, where hundreds of workers take their midday meal, has become something approaching a feast hall. Food is served not in utilitarian portions, but as carefully composed presentations where visual appeal matters as much as nutritional content. Tables are arranged to facilitate conversation and social bonding. Music plays softly in the background, not recorded performances but live musicians who find fulfillment in providing ambience for their colleagues' meals. Vex takes his meal to a table where several other administrators are already seated. They welcome him warmly, their conversation flowing naturally from professional topics to personal interests to philosophical discussions about the nature of experience and consciousness. One of them, a young woman named Alyssa, who works in resource allocation, describes a revelation she had while meditating that morning. She speaks of perceiving reality as layers of sensation and meaning, of understanding existence as a tapestry woven from individual experiences that combine into greater patterns beyond any single perspective. The others listen with genuine interest, offering their own insights and experiences. The conversation goes deep, exploring questions about identity, purpose, and the relationship between individual desire and collective harmony. These are topics that would have been dismissed as wasteful navel-gazing in the previous culture, but now they're recognized as essential to understanding how to live fully. Vex contributes his own observations, finding that his thoughts flow more clearly when expressed aloud, that ideas develop through collaborative exploration in ways that isolated contemplation could never achieve. The discussion leaves him energized rather than drained, excited about perspectives he hadn't considered. The afternoon brings a meeting with representatives from the mining operations in the southern continent. Vex expects this to be challenging. Mining has always been the most difficult sector to manage, plagued by safety violations, labor disputes, and chronic underperformance. But the representatives who arrive are transformed beyond recognition. These are men and women who spent their lives in darkness, extracting minerals from hostile geology, enduring conditions that broke bodies and spirits. Now they carry themselves with pride and grace, speaking eloquently about their work as if describing an art form. The lead representative, a man named Khorne, who was previously known for his surliness and resistance to authority, presents their sector's performance with genuine enthusiasm. Mining operations have been completely restructured, he explains. The work remains physically demanding, but it's no longer soul-crushing. They've discovered that extraction can be performed as a kind of sculpture, removing stone to reveal the valuable minerals hidden within. Each mining crew approaches their work site as a collaborative artwork, planning their excavations for aesthetic as well as practical efficiency. The tunnels they create are beautiful, following natural geology in ways that emphasize the stone's inherent structure. Productivity has increased dramatically, Khorne reports, because workers take pride in their craft. Accidents have virtually disappeared because people pay attention to their environment, seeing danger as aesthetic disruption rather than merely physical threat. The minerals they extract are of higher quality because they're removed with care rather than brute force. Vex reviews the supporting data and finds it supports everything Khorne claims. The southern mining operations are exceeding quotas by substantial margins while maintaining perfect safety records. The workers report unprecedented satisfaction with their roles. Retention is perfect. No one wants to leave. It's impossible, except it's happening. The transformation has reached even the most degraded and difficult sectors, elevating everything it touches. After the meeting, Vex stands at his office window looking out over the city. The view is spectacular in ways it wasn't 6 months ago. The industrial landscape has been softened with decoration and greenery, harsh lines broken by curves and organic elements. The sunset paints the sky in colors that seem more vivid than physics, should allow purples and golds and crimsons that make the ordinary extraordinary. He can see people moving through the streets below, each one a unique expression of human potential realized. They're all beautiful now, all graceful, all moving through life with purpose and fulfillment. This is what humanity could be if freed from the artificial constraints that the Imperium imposed in the name of survival. But it's also what humanity becomes when it surrenders to forces that care nothing for human welfare beyond how effectively souls can be harvested. The Dark Prince isn't improving their lives out of benevolence. This transformation serves demonic purposes that Vex can only partially comprehend. The patterns on his skin pulse with his heartbeat, glowing faintly in the dimming light. They're beautiful, these marks of his damnation. He traces them with his fingers, feeling the slight texture where they rise from his skin, marveling at how natural they've become. Ceres arrives at his office as the sun finishes setting, bringing food she prepared herself and a bottle of wine that shouldn't exist on this industrial world. They eat together in comfortable silence, communication flowing through glances and touches that convey more than words ever could. The wine is exquisite, better than anything Vex has tasted before. It doesn't just intoxicate, it opens perception, allowing him to experience the moment more fully. The food becomes transcendent, each flavor somehow more intense and complex. The simple act of dining becomes a meditation on sensation and sharing. They make love in Vex's office with the city lights visible through the window, their bodies moving in rhythms that feel choreographed despite being spontaneous. Physical pleasure merges with emotional connection and something else. A spiritual dimension that Vex lacks vocabulary to describe but experiences as undeniably real. At the peak of sensation, boundaries dissolve. Vex is himself but also Ceres, feeling what she feels, experiencing the moment from her perspective as well as his own. He's also somehow aware of the city beyond the window, of millions of other people engaged in their own experiences of pleasure and creation and connection. He's part of something vast, a collective consciousness that encompasses the entire transformed population. Individual identity persists, but exists as a node in a greater network, experiencing itself through millions of perspectives simultaneously. This is apotheosis, he realizes. This is transcendence. This is what the Emperor promised humanity 10,000 years ago, but could never deliver because his vision was based on domination rather than fulfillment. The thought is heretical, blasphemous, absolutely forbidden. But it's also true in ways Vex can't deny. They return to normal consciousness eventually, their bodies entangled, breathing synchronized. The connection persists even after the intensity fades, a permanent link that allows them to sense each other's emotional states, to share thoughts without speaking. "We're not human anymore," Ceres says softly. "Not really. Not in any way the Imperium would recognize." Vex agrees. They've transcended humanity's previous limitations and become something else, something that retains human characteristics while incorporating elements that humans were never meant to contain. "Is that wrong?" he asks, genuinely uncertain. Ceres considers the question seriously. Wrong implies a standard for judgment. She finally responds. "But our standards have changed. What we are now evaluates itself differently than what we were before would have evaluated us." It's a sophisticated answer that acknowledges the impossibility of objective judgment while avoiding the paralysis of moral relativism. They're different, transformed, no longer capable of evaluating themselves by baseline human standards because those standards no longer apply to their altered existence. The next morning brings news that shakes even their transformed consciousness. The Inquisition has been contacted. Cornelius's delegation filed reports that triggered investigation protocols. An inquisitor is en route, expected to arrive within weeks. The planetary governor calls an emergency council to determine how to respond. Vex attends along with senior administrators, Mechanicus representatives, and leaders from various civilian sectors. Governor Carthos opens the meeting with characteristic calm. She's radiant now, her transformation having progressed to the point where she barely resembles her previous self. She looks ageless, perfect, divine in ways that make looking at her an almost religious experience. "We face a decision," she explains. "We can hide what we've become, present ourselves as loyal Imperial citizens who have simply found more efficient methods. Or we can reveal our transformation and attempt to explain why it represents improvement rather than corruption." The discussion that follows demonstrates how thoroughly their thinking has been restructured. No one suggests fighting the Inquisition. That would be futile and pointless. No one proposes fleeing. Where would they go? The debate centers on whether honesty or deception better serves their interests. Magos Ferrum, whose augmentations have been supplemented with organic enhancements that blur the line between machine and flesh, argues for transparency. "We have nothing to hide," he insists. "Our improvements are measurable, our enhanced capabilities undeniable." Perhaps the Inquisition can be made to understand that what they perceive as corruption is actually evolution. Others are skeptical. The Inquisition doesn't negotiate with chaos corruption. They don't debate theology with those they've judged heretical. They arrive, they investigate, they execute judgment. Attempting to reason with them would be like trying to reason with a fire. The nature of the entity precludes meaningful dialogue. Administrator Kelos suggests a middle path present the surface improvements while concealing the extent of their transformation. Show the Inquisitor the increased productivity, the improved quality of life, the measurable benefits. Hide the patterns on their skin. Suppress the more obvious manifestations of their enhancement. Maintain enough normalcy to avoid immediate condemnation. Vex listens to all perspectives, but finds himself increasingly convinced that deception is impossible. The Inquisitor will have specialists trained to detect chaos corruption. They'll have psychers capable of reading minds and auras. They'll have equipment designed to measure warp resonance and demonic influence. The transformation is too comprehensive to hide. It's woven into the planet's reality at fundamental levels. Even if they could conceal the physical manifestations, the psychic signature of what they've become would be immediately apparent to anyone trained to perceive it. He speaks this conclusion aloud, and the room falls silent. Everyone knows he's right. There's no hiding what they've become. The question is whether to acknowledge it openly or force the Inquisition to discover it themselves. Governor Carthazos makes the decision. They will be honest. They will show the Inquisitor everything, explain the transformation process, demonstrate the genuine improvements they've achieved. If condemnation comes despite their honesty, so be it. But they won't compound their situation by a tempting deception that's doomed to fail. The meeting adjourns with everyone understanding that the Inquisitor's arrival will likely mean the end of everything they've built. Exterminatus is the standard response to chaos corruption of this magnitude. The planet will burn, and everyone on it will die, but knowing this doesn't change their daily routines. Work continues. Life proceeds, beauty is created and shared. Every moment becomes more precious because they know it might be among their last. Vex spends the following weeks in a state of heightened awareness, experiencing each day with intensity born from knowing the end approaches. His relationship with Cirrus deepens beyond what he thought possible, their connection approaching true union of consciousness. They share not just experiences but understanding, perceiving the world through combined perspective that reveals patterns neither could see alone. They create art together. Sculptures formed from industrial materials that express concepts too complex for words. They perform music that harmonizes their individual voices into something greater than either could achieve separately. They make love with intention and attention that transforms physical pleasure into transcendent experience. Every interaction becomes meaningful. Every conversation touches depths. Every shared moment is recognized as precious and unrepeatable. The city around them continues its evolution. Buildings grow organic extensions, architecture becoming something between structure and sculpture. Streets rearrange themselves to improve flow and aesthetic appeal. Public spaces transform into gardens where impossible flowers bloom and water flows in patterns that shouldn't be stable, but somehow maintain their form. The population has reached a state of collective harmony that makes previous social organization seem primitive by comparison. Conflicts are resolved before they manifest into disagreements. Needs are anticipated and met before they become urgent. Everyone contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their requirements, not through enforced redistribution, but through genuine care for collective well-being. This is what post-scarcity culture looks like, Vex realizes. Not because resources are unlimited. They're still constrained by material reality, but because desires have been harmonized with available resources. People want what's possible and feel no deprivation about what isn't. It's utopia, in the most literal sense, a good place that cannot exist in reality. Except it does exist, achieved through mechanisms that the Imperium correctly identifies as damnation. The Inquisitor arrives on a cold morning 3 weeks after the warning was received. Her ship appears in orbit without warning, ignoring standard approach protocols and traffic control. It's a clear statement she's not here as a guest, but as judge and executioner. Inquisitor Tyrannus descends to the planet's surface accompanied by a small retinue that includes space marines, battle sisters, and various specialists. They land at the planetary governor's complex, their arrival watched by thousands of citizens who gather peacefully to observe. Governor Carthos receives them formally, making no attempt to conceal what the planet has become. Tyrannus is a severe woman, her face scarred by decades of fighting chaos in all its forms, her eyes hard with certainty about the rightness of her cause. She tours the city with her retinue, observing everything with cold analytical attention. The transformed architecture, the enhanced population, the artwork that covers every surface, the music that fills every public space, the unmistakable signs of comprehensive chaos corruption. Vex is assigned as one of her guides, tasked with explaining how the transformation occurred and why it should be understood as improvement rather than corruption. He approaches the task with little hope of success, but determination to present their case as effectively as possible. Tyrannus listens to his explanations without comment, her expression revealing nothing. She observes the mining operations, the agricultural sectors, the administrative complexes. She interviews citizens from every social stratum, asking about their experiences and transformations. Her psychers confirm what everyone already knew: the entire planet resonates with warp energy. Every person has been touched by demonic influence. The corruption is total and irreversible. After 3 days of investigation, Tyrannus calls for a final meeting with planetary leadership. Vex attends alongside Governor Carthos and other senior administrators, knowing what judgment will be pronounced but hoping somehow for mercy. Tyrannus speaks with the authority of someone who has never doubted their purpose. This world is lost. You have surrendered to the Dark Prince. Your souls belong to chaos. Exterminatus will be executed within 48 hours. All personnel are to evacuate immediately to designated refugee ships. Governor Carthos responds with dignity. We will not evacuate. This is our world, our achievement, our home. If it must be destroyed, we choose to die with it rather than face your idea of salvation. The other administrators voice agreement. No one wants to survive as refugees, stripped of everything that makes their existence meaningful, subjected to interrogation and purification rituals that might preserve their physical lives while destroying everything they've become. Better to die complete than survive as fragments. Tyrannus seems unsurprised by this response. So be it, she says simply. You have 2 days to prepare yourselves, or she and her retinue depart, returning to their ship to await the arrival of the Exterminatus fleet. The planetary population is left with 48 hours to exist before being erased from reality. The response to this deadline is not panic or despair, but a strange kind of celebration. If they're going to die, they'll die having lived fully. These final days become a continuous festival, an extended meditation on existence and experience. Vex spends his remaining time with Cirrus, creating final artworks, making final love, having final conversations that attempt to capture and preserve everything they've meant to each other. They know their consciousness will not survive beyond death. Demonic corruption doesn't grant immortality, just different forms of existence that bear little resemblance to their current selves. These are their last moments as individuals, and they treat them accordingly. The city becomes one vast celebration, its population united in acknowledgement of their shared fate. Music plays continuously. Food is shared freely. Art is created and displayed without concern for preservation. People make love openly, their final acts of pleasure and connection performed without shame or concealment. It's beautiful in ways that make Vex weep. This is what humanity could be, he thinks. This is what they achieved despite, or perhaps because of, their damnation. A society based on fulfillment rather than survival, on beauty rather than utility, on collective joy rather than individual competition. For 2 days, they live more fully than most humans experience in entire lifetimes. The Exterminatus fleet arrives precisely on schedule. Multiple ships in orbit, their weapons charged and targeting systems locked. There's no final warning, no last chance for evacuation. Tyrannus has made her judgment, and the Imperium's response is mechanical in its inevitability. Vex and Cirrus stand together on a rooftop overlooking the city, watching the sky as the first torpedoes begin their descent. Millions of others do the same, gathering in public spaces to face the end together. The torpedoes are beautiful in their own way, burning through the atmosphere like falling stars. They're instruments of genocide, but they're also perfectly designed for their function, elegant in their engineering. Was it worth it? Cirrus asks, echoing the question Vex asked himself months ago. He considers seriously before answering. They lived beautifully for a brief time, achieved genuine fulfillment, experienced existence as few humans ever do. The cost was their souls, their humanity, their immortal essence traded for temporary pleasure. Yes, he answers truthfully. Even knowing the end, I would make the same choices again. Sarah squeezes his hand. They stand together as the first torpedo strikes, its payload detonating with force that turns kilometers of cityscape into plasma instantly. The shockwave approaches at supersonic speed, a wall of destruction that erases everything it touches. Vex has time for one final thought: we chose beauty over survival, and I regret nothing. Then the fire consumes them and consciousness ends. The planet burns for 7 hours, cyclonic torpedoes systematically destroying every settlement, every structure, every sign that humans ever lived on this world. The atmosphere ignites, temperatures reaching levels that sterilize the surface of all biological material. Oceans boil away, leaving dried seabeds that are then melted into glass. When the bombardment ends, nothing remains but a lifeless rock, its surface glowing dull red from residual heat. The population of 12 billion has been reduced to component atoms, their achievements erased, their transformation ended. Inquisitor Tyrannus observes from orbit, her expression revealing no satisfaction or regret. This is simply duty fulfilled, heresy purged, another corrupted world cleansed. She files her reports, notes the planet's coordinates for permanent quarantine, and departs to address other threats. The Imperium records the world as lost to chaos corruption, a cautionary tale about the insidiousness of Slaanesh's influence. But the details are classified, the specific nature of the corruption suppressed. The Inquisition doesn't want other worlds. Knowing how effective this particular transformation was, how genuinely improved life became under demonic influence. Better to maintain the narrative that chaos corruption brings only degradation and suffering. The truth, that it can bring fulfillment and beauty at the cost of damnation, is too dangerous to acknowledge. So the story is simplified, the nuance eliminated. Another world fell to heresy. Another population was rightfully destroyed. Another victory for the Imperium in its eternal war against chaos. But, in the warp, in that impossible space where consciousness and reality merge, something persists. The souls harvested from that world continue to experience existence in forms incomprehensible to baseline humans. They are not individual anymore, not really conscious in ways mortals would recognize. But they still exist in some sense, still experiencing sensation and beauty and pleasure, though translated through demonic mechanics that strip away everything recognizably human. They got their eternal paradise, in a way. Just not in any form they would have chosen if they'd understood the full implications of their transformation. This is what daily life under Slaanesh really looks like: gradual improvement that only reveals its true cost after the price has been paid. Genuine fulfillment that leads to damnation so complete that even death doesn't provide escape. Paradise achieved through mechanisms that destroy the very consciousness capable of appreciating it. The Imperium is right to fear this corruption above all others, not because it's obviously evil, that would make it easier to resist, but because it offers genuine improvement to genuine problems, delivers on promises that aren't lies until the very end, provides fulfillment that makes damnation seem like fair trade. Somewhere in the galaxy right now, another world is beginning its transformation. Another population is noticing that life has become slightly more pleasant, work slightly more fulfilling, existence slightly more meaningful. They're experiencing the first stages of the same corruption, and they're glad of it. They don't yet understand that improvement is the bait, that fulfillment is the hook, that paradise inevitably leads to perdition. They will understand eventually, in those final moments before the Exterminatus fleet arrives. They'll recognize what they've become and have to decide whether it was worth it. Most of them will answer yes. That's the true horror of Slaanesh's corruption, knowing the cost and accepting it anyway, choosing damnation with open eyes, because the alternative is returning to the grinding misery that characterizes baseline Imperial existence. The Dark Prince doesn't need to deceive or coerce. The truth is seductive enough. Life under Slaanesh is everything you've ever wanted. It's also the end of everything you are. Both things are true, and recognizing the contradiction doesn't resolve it. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, paradise exists. But the price of admission is your soul, and the paradise doesn't survive your transformation into something capable of inhabiting it. The Imperium stands vigilant against this corruption, ready to destroy entire worlds to prevent its spread. They're not wrong to do so. The threat is real, the danger genuine. But sometimes, in the quiet darkness of their quarters, even Inquisitors wonder whether survival at the cost of never truly living is victory or just prolonged defeat. They don't speak these doubts aloud. They suppress them through prayer and duty, through faith in the Emperor, and commitment to humanity's protection. But the doubts persist because they're grounded in truth that no amount of faith can fully eliminate, that the Imperium offers existence without joy, survival without meaning, life that's barely distinguishable from death. Slaanesh offers the alternative. And sometimes, in the darkest hours, that alternative looks like salvation rather than damnation. That's what daily life under the dark Prince really looks like, not obvious horror, but seductive beauty that only becomes horrifying after you've already been consumed.